All right. Hello, coffee makers, not coffee takers. He is the master of cyber farms, Alfredo B. Nash Jr., and I, the people's chief, Dr. Joseph J. Miller Jr., and we're your hosts for the Cyber Coffee Hour. Alfredo and I hail from Mount Vernon, New York, and we are excited to share our experiences and stories along with those of our incredible guests. Our mission is to impart knowledge, enhance understanding, and cultivate a sense of community in the expansive world of cyberspace. So for today's show, we'll have a coffee chat with the founder of Nova IT Guy, Kevin Latchford. Now, Kevin Latchford is an experienced network and systems engineer with a current focus on cybersecurity, DevOps, and ML/AI after many years in telecommunications and associated technologies. He is the main guy of Nova IT Guy in Northern Virginia and has a wide array of work and services. He has recently been featured on the Frank's World podcast with Frank Levine, discussing his recent work on the security implications and vulnerabilities of large language models, or LLMs. Recently published and presented at the Northern Virginia Cyber Meetup in Sterling, Virginia. Kevin Latchford, welcome to the Cyber Coffee Hour.
Greetings. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Good. Glad to have you on the show. So I guess, Kevin, for one, again, thank you for coming through, and just how you been? You know, what's been I guess how's the weekend been treating you?
The weekend's been very lovely. It started out very nicely at AWS Community Days here in Arlington, Virginia. I had a great meetup with a bunch of my colleagues, and we got to talk a lot about AI and cybersecurity in the cloud context. So it was quite an interesting way to start the weekend, and it's been a very quiet weekend thus far, and very pleasant.
Fredzo, what about you, sir?
Grinding. I just started my pesticide applicator class. So I'm doing that at nights on Thursdays. So I'm back in that green side rotation. Side of the desk of that, I'm doing some FEMA training for incident command systems. Didn't know it existed. So I'm on that now, doing that side of the desk and trying to double dip there between the two, that is. And then also I'm getting hit up by my cousins talking about this potential Subway Series thing going on.
Oh, yeah.
Yankees and the Mets, they're blowing me up. They're saying, am I paying attention? I'm not. I wasn't paying attention.
Man. Well, you're missing out because I was definitely paying attention. I was locked into the game last night. So yeah, so Yankees they won the ALCS. They won the pennant. So they're going to the World Series first time since 2009. It's been a long time.
Can't believe it's been that long.
So we're still waiting. It's honestly, I think it's a long shot for the Mets. I mean, they've had a great year so far, but the Dodgers are up 3-1 in the series. And each win for the Dodgers has not been close for the Mets. It's been like blowouts. So, and they go back to LA tonight. So I don't know. It would be nice, but I think it's going to be Yankees Dodgers World Series. So we'll see how it goes. But I was definitely screaming like a madman last night on the last out. Definitely. October is baseball time, man. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so Kevin, with your background in telecommunications and your current focus on cybersecurity, how do you see the fields intersecting in today's rapidly evolving tech landscape?
Well, especially considering the fact that, pretty much they're merged in this little object right here. Basically, I mean, in most of the world, mind you, this device right here is the personal computer in many parts of the world, because this is where mobile, especially, is where a lot of the infrastructure is, mobile telephony. So I think that's a definite thing, because if that's the most common node out there, well, that's the thing most likely to get taken down and get hit. Right. So I think that's definitely it. But I think it's an extension of where we've been going. When telecom really started bounding, especially with the breakup of Ma Bell in the mid 80s, competition came in, innovation came about. Around the world, also, their telecom systems denationalized, so there was a lot more competition, more things like that, which, became the breeding ground for what became the networks that made the early internet the internet today. So now we've built the road, now we've got to secure the road. And now that we've got to where we need to go, now we got to protect it to make sure, the travelers on the road aren't being robbed by highwaymen, and, nobody's trying to blow the road up. And that's where I think cybersecurity now comes in, because I think that's the next big frontier of the virtual infrastructure.
Gotcha.
Right. All right. So we'll jump into the next one. As the main guy of Nova IT guy, how do you balance your work across cybersecurity, DevOps, ML and AI, excuse me, and what are the synergies between these and the benefits for your clients?
Well, in regards to cybersecurity and DevOps, they're becoming one and the same because most operations today are moving into the what we often call DevOps methodology, which is an extension of Agile, but applied to I think a broader context. And I think that's the way we're doing things now. And I think cybersecurity is going into that because now, especially now that we have this very agile method of developing infrastructures and solutions, now security is now being brought in. It was often said a few years ago even that security was an afterthought. Now it's become part and parcel and central to it. We're now hearing the words DevSecOps coming from shift left, secure by design.
Right.
So now the DevOps methodology is being applied to security to make sure the job is done right the first time, every time.
100%.
And now it's come even bigger with AI.
Yeah, and I see those becoming like you said, the afterthought of security as a feature, and the security becomes a software factory in itself, especially with like the secure by design mantras coming back, the SDLC or secure SSDLCs. They'll be making security factories inside the pipelines, if you will, if we stick with that mantra. So I 100% agree. That's a tie into as well. You recently presented the security implications of large language models at Northern Virginia Cyber Meetup. Can you share sort of like some of the critical vulnerabilities you identified in LLMs?
Of course. One of the most glaring ones is what is known as jailbreaking. And jailbreaking is where we break the guardrails. Now, for all who are not aware, LLMs have a series of safeties put in them because the data is crawled from all over the internet and it needs to be filtered. Now, some information is okay to be given to the general public. Some of that information the developers might want to use for other purposes, but we don't want the general public using it because some of that data might have been gleaned from sources that might be sketchy, might be more secured, or are sensitive information. And when those guardrails are broken, you can do that. And my colleague and I were working on it. And for those of you who are not aware of it, if you'll see my LinkedIn page, you'll see it there. This discussion is actually, the entire presentation is available on LinkedIn. But basically, we were looking at it, and we were basically able to make it engage in what is more or less a legal operation. Allow it to dispense information about making prohibited items, spicy topics, producing malicious code, even methods to maybe even hack it. And some of them are even, some of these are even more glaring. I was actually involved in a cybersecurity little tournament, and I just happened to use ChatGPT, and I said, I need this for a hack the box. Well, before it wouldn't let me, but if I said, I need this for a hack the box, it told me how to do it.
Wow.
Well, now I believe that feature has since been patched. However, that's kind of a glaring problem. And that's the biggest thing is jailbreaking. The other is model inversion and model disassembly, the reverse engineering of the model. And the final thing is model poisoning, also known as brainwashing. And brainwashing is a real problem because you can basically teach it to engage in operations or give it false information to spread misinformation or to corrupt the data. And jailbreaking pretty much is the chief vector. It's kind of like I kind of compare it to Kerber roasting on identity systems. It's kind of a very effective vector to get in and then move and be mobile within a system.
So let me piggyback on that a little bit, Kevin. When I hear jailbreaking, especially at a model, and you're saying this is a safeguard in the model, can you now use that model to hack or compromise other defensive countermeasures once it's jailbroken?
Well, I mean, you can do all sorts of things. I mean, the idea of jailbreaking is just to get access into the model, to manipulate it. Or to draw information that you would not ordinarily get. Once again, as I bring up that Kerber roasting analogy, you want to either iterate or you want to manipulate. Now, could you make it do other things? Well, yes, I could inject something in there. In fact, one thing we figured out was there's an implication of a very particular tool that everybody likes to use to make their coding easier. I would keep a very close eye on that to make sure that was not compromised, because you can make it put in default answers in the prompts.
Right.
And those returns from the AI model could have malicious code embedded in them. So like every time you write a particular set of code, it puts in an executable line that does something, opens a port. Like literally I could open up Netcat. I can make something that has a Netcat system, and when I call out to it, it'll open up all those Netcat ports. Well, if you have something like that, that makes Log4j look like nothing.
That's interesting. So kind of backing up a little bit when you talked about, I guess, more or less a vulnerability where it's teaching, it was the output from the AI tool was that it was telling you how to jailbreak a system or a particular device. But do you see how that could be advantageous for maybe red teams? Kind of maybe use that as maybe like a starting point for maybe some of their missions as what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, I understand like for maybe you don't want that out for the everyday user, but do you see that more for like maybe like intelligence or organizations that may see value in that?
Oh, good heavens, yeah. I mean, in fact, let's get down to even the larger crux of the problem, which is red teaming of AI is not exactly done yet. The blue teaming and red teaming of AI is more or less in its infancy. In fact, that is probably, I would say, one of the largest elements of my current research is in that, is looking for ways to do that, because there is no Kedra, there is no John the Ripper, there is no Hydra specifically for AI yet that can test it to the larger context of it, of this thing. Yes, it is an piece of enterprise software. It should be treated the same. However, its context, the way you interact with it, is far different. And there's not as much yet. It is growing, but we're just starting. We're just starting with that. And that's something I'm looking into myself, as I said in my research. But furthermore, jailbreaking is one way to get in there, inverting the model, right, hallucinations, and as I said, brainwashing.
It's interesting, as you said, the models. I caught that is to you an enterprise software, because you don't hear a lot of people saying that of LLMs yet either. They don't say that, they don't treat it as a software artifact or something that would go through the traditional factories that we mentioned earlier. So it's very interesting that your research is inclusive of that and also paints a bigger picture of all the folks that don't look at the LLMs as an artifact, right? The entire LLM itself. So that's very insightful there.
Indeed. I mean, the thing about it is with AI is that it's a shiny thing. It's a new thing, so it's a shiny thing. We don't see it as enterprise software yet. We should. We don't often.
Right. So, Kevin, so your recent appearance on Frank's World podcast touched on the security risks of AI plugins. Which of those risks pose the greatest threat in your estimation?
Well, I would definitely say, first of all, with the extensive use of code generators and code assistants, that's a real dangerous one, because that's where code could get brought in. Malicious code could be put in. There's a lot of backdoors that could be installed through systems. And the thing about it is yes, with SBOMs and things of that kind, we do have a greater pedigree of where our code comes from. SBOMs, for anybody who doesn't know, those are software bill of materials. Basically, while it does get us there, there's not much you can do if you're not aware of something else being injected in there, unless you manually check it. Well, sometimes people, sometimes due diligence is not done. Should be, sometimes isn't. And that's a big problem is with AI plugins, is especially if they're going to be using code assistants. Another one is we all saw the famous one where a truck was bought for $1. I believe it was a Chevy was bought for $1 because they did not set up their system to have acceptable input validation. So somebody bought a car for $1. They sued him in court, and the judge literally told him, "No, you have to sell him that truck for $1. Too bad for you. You should have done your due diligence."
Yeah, it is. And that's a top 10 for you. Another 20-year top 10 that we have not seen cross over to LLM yet.
Man, I wish I took advantage of that. I would have got myself a nice Suburban.
Whoa. We don't want that attribution. It couldn't be me. I would have got 20. So wait, so the other thing that I like that you mentioned. Say again?
I said I'll take a Bentley or an Aston Martin.
Right.
The other thing that you kind of mentioned too, that's also in its infancy is I haven't seen an SBOM for LLMs or AI. Because SBOMs are in their infancy too. Good luck getting all the maintainers of those plugins to attribute, put their artifacts together, and put an SBOM together for that AI model, or the AI plugin in this case.
Well, I got one even worse. For all you who use Hugging Face, just understand that isn't filtered.
What is Hugging Face?
Yeah,
Hugging Face is kind of like the GitHub for AI models and engines.
Really?
And some of them are not. Some of them are not. My colleague, who is the founder of the Northern Virginia Cyber Meetup, Mr. Tom Bendian, and I were looking over it. We kind of found that to our surprise. We were remarkably surprised that it wasn't as monitored as we thought. Now, in the time that I have since really dug into Hugging Face, they may have actually done a little bit more security, but at the time we didn't see it, to us, adequate protection. But that's the thing. It's use at your own risk. Well, you don't know. You have to, and it's not very easy to iterate models. They're very opaque. Right. So you can kind of see what's in there, but you can't see everything. So you have to be very, very careful about what you're putting into your system. And you need to vet it to make sure that it's like that. And that's not just for the data sets. That's not just the models. How about your AI agents? Okay, have you protected them against something like SQL injection? Have you? Have you looked into, is there a separation between the model and the agent? I mean, can someone get through there? You need to make sure there's probably, a very clear airlock between the two, because if somebody can get in through the agent into the model,
right,
they can sneak right in there. I mean, that could create the ultimate covert channel to undermining your model.
Right. So with that, along those lines, given your experience in network and systems engineering, what advice would you give to organizations looking to strengthen their cybersecurity posture, while embracing AI and ML technologies?
Well, I would just say, once again, you need to treat it like an enterprise solution. No ifs, ands, or buts. Right. And you don't need to be afraid of it. I mean, first of all, businesses are adopting it at a remarkable clip. Right. I think I saw the other day, it was about 80% on earnings calls they heard were talking about AI adoption of one kind or another. But your security divisions in your company should be focused on it. If you have an MSP, an MSSP, they need to be starting to talk about it. You need to be looking into it. And definitely one other thing, and this is something that hopefully we've learned from cloud. We should definitely be applying it to AI too. Mm-hmm. Remember, if you are using a public AI, you are using somebody else's computer.
100%. We're coming back to the basics.
So, right. if you do that, it is probably wise. We moved from, okay, we're going to go and put everything on the cloud from our private system up into the cloud. Now we're going to hybrid. That's what you need to do with AI. Keep your most important cards close to your chest like you would in a game of poker.
Exactly.
Be willing to put some cards out there on those public cloud services, because especially for some stuff, you're going to need that bursting capability, because there's going to be sometimes you're going to need that big, larger model, engine, everything. But for some of the more sensitive stuff, especially with privacy laws, I mean, America hasn't gotten to GDPR. I have a sneaking suspicion we are one day going to get something like that. And if we do, your own model is probably going to be the more expedient way of doing it, because it's behind the wall, just like your private cloud that you have for more sensitive, very company proprietary data. You keep that behind the wall.
No, that's a great point, because honestly, it was actually something that I questioned or even had a concern, especially looking at it from the government perspective, when we first saw NSA adopt AI or build out the AI center when General Nakasone was still a director. And honestly, I questioned. I was like, how are we? I would say probably one of the top things that I thought about was, are we going to be able to maintain our classified data from going out? So as you said, I think you have to treat it like, yes, of course you're going to keep the classified data, said close hold, but then more the unclass that you was going to put out to the public anyway. I think that would use to train the AI models and things of that nature. But it is, but even still, it does some, because we're starting to, as you said, starting to see more adoption of AI, both private and public sectors. And yeah, I think you do have to be careful because, some organizations, they may treat it, if you're not well versed in it or have that forethought to know, like, when you're putting this out there, it's out there, so you can't get it back. So but so do you think enough? Do you think, I'd say maybe there's enough education when it comes to that to understand, like, when you're putting something out there into like AI model, or you're trying to use an AI tool, like, okay, you need to be very careful, like what you're teaching it, because it's not just private to you, it's going to be accessible to everyone else.
Yeah. And while this thing is not cognizant and more likely never will be, it still can, it can still do, it kind of operates a bit autonomously. So even if you were to be careful with that, let's first start with, you are super careful. You have no idea what the unintended consequences of putting that kind of data in there, especially if it's been manipulated by the public, from trolls on 4chan to anonymous to state-run actors. You have no idea who might have hit it unless you have the monitoring, unless you have the transparency to see into the opacity of the model, to know if it's been tampered with, things of that kind. But okay, let's say you're very blasé about it. Okay, fine, but just understand that you're at a high rate of unauthorized leakages, because once again, there's another method in getting the model to talk, and we call it interrogation. And basically, that's when that's what we call it interrogation, is because basically you're giving the model the third degree, asking it questions, you're trying to make it spew that data. Well, if you get that unauthorized leakage, which some models have actually had happen, which is why, by the way, the government has actually put in massive prohibitions about using AI.
Right.
Once again, as you say, once it gets out there, it's out there, and it can be rather easy to obtain because it doesn't follow the usual security checks. It doesn't follow the normal classification scheme. Right. And that brings us even to the bigger question about data ownership. Who's the data owner? Who's the data custodian? Who's the data?
I'll take that one, because you guys, I was sitting there biting the inside of my cheek, because I'm a private cloud enclave, person. I always thought it was insane to me that we didn't have our private enclaves already established, because all that comes with it: my data classification, my monitoring standards, who came into my cloud and touched what, right? And then who can I revoke? Well, the biggest thing I've seen in the last 10 years is we used to be able to evict people from private cloud. We used to be able to deprecate certain data sets and say, listen, you didn't play by the rules, get out. Now, in the advent of public cloud, it's a complete commoditization. Like, oh, we need everybody to come in and misconfig. I just hate not taking any shots. Just what I've observed is private cloud always had what you mentioned. The security, I like to call them the outer havens, right? To your point, Dr. Joseph, too, we always had that means of seeing in a private cloud, a hybrid environment, conversion of one site security plan or one particular model of classification, who's doing what, when, where, and how, and why. And then they violate, get them out. It's the same thing that has to happen with the models. If we see university data sets, hospitals, critical infrastructures, not abiding by this private enclave, get them out. Sanitize them, delete them, deprecate them, right? This has to come back to this mindset, because to your point, it's going to be a wild, wild west. It's going to be all of this chaotic infrastructure, chaotic, model sets being used for malicious, let's say, intents and purposes, and we can't attribute it back to one single university or one single critical infrastructure. It'll be many data sets compromised in our environments here. And they like to say convergence, which I hate using that word, but it's not a controlled environment unless it's converged. So a lot of research has gone into that to say, look, once you get into this wild west mentality, start classifying, start monitoring thoroughly, start asking those actors that are good and bad, like, you will be deprecated once you break the rules. That's a hard stop. Like, there's no exception to that. Until we start doing that, I'm getting ready for Skynet. I'm gonna be real. I'm getting ready for like this whole aboleth of out of control models that no one can attribute threats to, unfortunately.
So we have Kevin Latchford here on the Cyber Coffee Hour, founder of the Nova IT Guy. Second half of the show, just learn a little bit more about Kevin and going a more lighter route before we close things up. So, Kevin, what are the most significant emergent threats in cybersecurity today, and how should organizations prepare for them?
Well, I think one of the largest is probably the increase in state actor-led cyber incursions, GhostNet in China, the cyber wings of the Russian Federation's FSB and SVD, probably the cyber divisions in Iran, North Korea. Definitely, for many who do not know, except for those of us who played Mercenaries 2, Playground of Destruction, you might remember.
Wow, you brought it back. That was a good game.
You might remember that first group of cards you took down, the group called Division 31. Well, that actually exists. There was a group called Room 39 in the Korean Workers' Party, who their whole goal is to make money through illicit means for the North Korean regime. What is a wonderful way to make illicit money? Ransomware. Well, you can be rest assured they're pretty skilled in that. They're pretty versed in it. That's probably one that I would say right off the top of my head would be very dangerous. And that's a group that, has no hoots to give about that, has no scruples. The other thing is also, there is a lot of hacktivism. It's beyond anonymous now. That's a big thing. And the final thing is, just people getting their hands on technology they shouldn't have. Recently, there was the recent TikTok video about how to use flippers to break into Kias and Hyundai. Yeah. And that actually happened in my complex. Somebody had a Kia. I came out. I thought it was my car that got broken into. Glass on the ground. Why was there glass on the ground? Because this young enterprising genius got the start codes, got the engine run codes, but failed to add the lock codes to his flipper. So because he had the engine started, everybody wanted to get in. So I guess he finally just took a brick and busted a window in so that it could go joyriding in the car.
Wow.
So that's
and you're right. It's enterprising because, some of us that have been around for a while, that stuff used to be in 2600 magazines. Now they're giving it out, on eBay and various exchanges to play around with. But it used to be you couldn't mess around with the flipper type, devices. But it seems like it's fair ground now. It's fair enterprise now.
Yeah. Well, in some states, it's considered, if you're not a cybersecurity professional or you have a reason to have it, it's technically possession of burglary tools in some states, as far as same thing with the lockpick kits that they used to give out at DEF CON. They were like, if you're going back to certain states, I wouldn't take these with you.
They still give them out at ICS villages.
Almost
you still can get, I have one over
Most
here.
Certainly.
No attribution, but, we keep them around.
Yes, sir.
I get it, but the security professionals need these tools as well, which is kind of crazy.
Yep.
Well, what was the first piece of technology that sparked your interest in cybersecurity?
Well, one of them was certainly that flipper. I was amazed at its design. Another thing was it was always something when the Northern Virginia Linux Users Group I attended, we used to always talk about Kali.
Yeah.
So I got my hands on that. I recently played with the purple iteration, which I find remarkably fascinating. I would say those two really got me into cyber extensively because I just saw what the thing could do. And when I was working with Polito Inc., I was one of the guys who was building all the jump boxes in there. So I got to really work with it on the ethical hacks, the pen tests that we were doing. And that really got me moving from just being a general IT engineer to becoming a cybersecurity practitioner more or less full time.
It's crazy. It's crazy how that story goes too, because I remember when Kali was backtracked back in the day, and it was kind of a little small baby distro, right? That only like fringe Linux users were using it, and now it seems like it's the de facto for offensive security.
Well, I mean, Mr. Robot really promoted it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Mr. Robot really promoted it. I cannot tell you enough how much. I mean, not that it's not my moniker when I win contests and stuff, that I'm always going under the moniker Mr. Robot. That has nothing to do with it, but but definitely.
That's probably like my most favorite IT cybersecurity related show, because I felt it was the most accurate one that you could see. I mean, there's been a lot of movies that's been put out, but you could watch it 5 minutes in, like, all right, this isn't real.
Yeah.
Like, you could tell, you start analyzing, and it's like, you can't even enjoy it. But Mr. Robot's probably the best one I've seen so far.
It didn't dawn on me until the second season that they actually had real technical consultants. They had like elastic consultants. They had former military. They had all types of technical consultants to make sure, hey, when he's in this scene, I think the thermostat scene too was the biggest one. Like, make sure it's like no mistakes in this scene. So you're right. It's probably the greatest reference today. So that plays into another question that we have for you. What would you say are some of the key challenges you faced during your journey to success, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the knowledge base. I mean, I come up from the ranks in IT. I wasn't formally schooled until recently on cybersecurity. It was all on the job and by trial and error, school of hard knocks. And that was the biggest thing, was developing the knowledge base when, it's kind of restricted as is, to the industry. And a lot of it is kind of, and practitioners, they're kind of like, the craftsmen of old in the guilds. They don't really reveal the trade secrets. And you kind of got to learn it yourself. And you got to have, and the other thing is also just the experience of just, okay, I know what the tool does, but what's the best possible way to use it? Not always self-explanatory. Sometimes is, sometimes isn't. So you got to get that creativity, and that's something that I had to learn. But if you have a rather creative mind, you can kind of figure it out.
Yeah, and I like the guilds reference for folks that are listening that don't get it. That's an MMO, multiplayer online kind of reference there.
I was talking about in medieval times, but whatever.
Well, I didn't know any of that until I actually started playing those games online, man. So you're right. You got to put the paladin armor on and get out there and get curious, get experimental. So what would you say so lighten up a little further here, what would you say your favorite coffee preferences that get you through the day?
Well, I mean, if there was one thing I'd say, as far as coffee, I can just get my hands on probably Royal Farms, simply because literally $3 will buy you a big gulp size of very high quality coffee. I'm very particular to the pumpkin spice they've been doing recently.
It's October. It's about that time.
Oh, yes,
hey,
they also have the creamer too, which is lovely.
I didn't know how serious Royal Farms was until National Coffee Day. Like, so I give you credit too, because I didn't know how serious. Like, they have so many different varieties and flavors, and then they have promotions around the coffee season. Like you said, today's, maybe you open up the Rofo app and it's like 5 pumpkin spice promotions.
Where else are we going to get Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee for $3?
That's the one I got for free. I was surprised. I got that one for free.
Now you're talking. Now you're talking.
And they have a dedicated machine for it. Dr. Joseph, you got to check that out. Yeah. They got a dedicated machine just for the Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee. No other machine has a dedicated machine like that.
That's respect. That's respect.
Say that again? Yeah, really? The machine is
Swiss made.
Oh, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole now.
But as far as, but then also I have other things. I mean, I'm a bit of a coffee kind of guy. I did drink Death Wish. My friend swears by it. I really don't think it's a good idea.
The name of the coffee is Death Wish?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Death Wish. It's high-grade organic coffee.
It's veteran-owned too, right? Isn't that one?
I think they may be. Black Rifle, I believe, is also.
That's the one I was thinking
Black
about.
Rifle.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about. Right.
You can find that pretty much any of your local ones. But then I also find the exotic ones. I mean, my favorite, because I'm a bit of an otaku dork, I like Boss Coffee, if I can get it. There is a great coffee brand out of Japan called Georgia. It's Chief Pitchman, or the two guys downtown. If you've ever seen the Chinko Machine game on YouTube, you'll know who the guys are, Hamada and Matsumoto. They are the chief pitchmen for it. It sounds like really great coffee from the commercials I've seen.
Right.
And it's just called Georgia.
It's called Georgia. It's called Georgia Coffee.
Okay,
You can find it. It's on. But the Boss Coffee ones are really great. They actually have one blend. It's called Rainbow Mountain. It's this particular set of Guatemalan coffee beans, and it's almost entirely that. And the can's not that big, but it's probably the best espresso you've ever had.
Wow, that's awesome. So if you could have any superpower to help you in cybersecurity, what would it be and why?
To have a sharpened, kind of hacker's mindset. Going back to Mr. Robot, I always kind of said, I would love to be able to operate in cybersecurity, defensively or offensively, as fluidly as Elliot does. He
Right.
immediately knows. It's just like it's a train of logic, a line of consciousness that he has. I'm getting there, but I'm not there yet. But I would love to have that capability, just to be able to just have that kind of just hyper attentioned mind, and just that sharpness and acuity to what needs to be done to solve a problem, cybersecurity problem. I would love to have that capability, because, man, then you wouldn't be no challenge would be too great, no incident too tough, no vulnerability insolvable.
Nice. Do you feel like your background mostly on the defensive side will make you more capable on the offensive side in that hyper focused mind?
Well, I think you have to know that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you do. I mean, look, for some who don't sit on the Instagram things or on the LinkedIn forums, look, you can be a blue wolf, you can be a red devil, or you can be a purple knight.
Purple knight, done.
But that's what I think you need to be.
Right.
I think you got to be a purple knight at the end, because if you want to know how to exploit something, you have to know what the defenses are in the first place. And if you want to prevent yourself from being pwned, you have to know how they do it. But they require two different skill sets. One is a kind of architect, and the other is a developer. Red team is more developer, blue team is more architect. But strangely enough, we're going in that direction. If you're a network engineer today going for your CCNA, you have to know AI, you have to know Ansible, you have to know Terraform, you have to know, NetNico. So you already have to be a bit of a developer. And even if you're a developer, you have to know the architectures of the computers you're working on, the systems you're working on, how the networks are set up. I mean, even a developer who's working on a web app probably has to understand BGP at least a little bit. So it is getting, actually, strangely enough, because of the paradigm shifting in the rest of IT, it does make this kind of thing, more easier than it was before.
Right.
That being said, you have to have a particular mindset to do this, and I think being skilled on both sides is better. For me, I like doing the defensive because I like catching the bad guy. I mean, I kind of want to, I want to be, and I often say, and I really think that, by the way, those logos should be replaced. I think that red team should be literally Deadpool, and I think defensive should be Batman. I think that's actually more fitting. But that's just me.
That's actually pretty cool.
I mean, you could only be a red wolf for so long, too, right?
Right. So, with that said, and last one for you, Kevin, are there any hobbies, interests, or recreational activities that you enjoy besides cybersecurity?
Well, I already alluded to one. I am a comic and manga fan.
Nice.
Anime, video games, do a lot of that. As well as, I'm a big sci-fi guy. I'm probably one of the biggest Robert Heinlein fans out there.
Gotcha.
Apparently. Other good literature, of course. Otherwise, a bit of outdoors. Do a little, I like cool cars, the modding of cars and stuff like that. That kind of thing is of interest to me lately.
Right.
I would say also trap shooting is really great activity. I'd say fishing.
Trap shooting. First, yeah. Can you open that up? What's the trap shooting opposed to target shooting?
It's like ski. It's like ski.
Okay, got you. Got you. So the ski, like, you launch it off and you hit the target midair type deal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. Now, what
it's
anime?
Really,
What anime or literature are you watching or reading now?
Well, right now I'm definitely watching Don to Don, which is the guy who drew that manga was literally the assistant to the guy who created the other great anime out of Shonen Jump, which was Chainsaw Man, which is pretty cool. I'm watching that right now. Gosh, there's a lot of them right now. The current season is kind of a bit of a mixed bag. I like some of them more than others. They did a redo of Ranma 1.5 on Netflix, which I'm finding somewhat interesting.
There's one on HBO Max. It's in black and white. I don't recall the name of it, but it's supposed to be, I guess, more of like this. It's on the horror side. It kind of leads towards more of the horror side of it, of anime. Again, I can't remember the name, but like basically from the previews, it shows like this girl, like her face is like, when she shows her face to people, it's like, I guess, grotesquely, disfigured, and it just scares everyone else off. I don't know if you've seen that but that kind of caught my interest. I was like, I added to the playlist. I haven't started it yet.
Well, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's something for everyone, though. Thankfully, these days in anime, I mean, they have.
Oh yeah.
They have some very. Right now one of the more interesting ones, highly anticipated, is a series called Girls in Panzer. A bunch of high school girls driving World War II tanks.
What? Which one is that on?
Series, to say the least.
What is that streaming on?
That streams on. It's on Netflix. You can get it on Netflix, or you can check it out on Crunchyroll. I'm sorry. Also on High Dive, which is Sentai Filmworks' streaming service. Crunchyroll is Crunchyroll. Used to be Funimation back in the day. They've merged.
Right.
And Viz Media, who recently just released the last chapter of the Sailor Moon series, the Crystal, which is more closer to Naoko Takeuchi's original manga, which a lot of people enjoyed back in the day. We were able to kind of see the ending of that, the way the story was originally told.
Right.
So those of you who grew up in the 90s, you didn't get exactly the right story. You got part of it, but you didn't get it all. But there's a lot of interesting ones out there. Initial D. You want to talk about the anime that probably, I would say, built the drifting craze in America with Souped Up Civics. Definitely, that's one that. I believe it's actually on Netflix. Way of the House Husband, which I recommend everybody watch if you want to watch something that's going to make you laugh pretty hard.
Way of the House.
That's just, there's just something innately about it.
And I found out the title of that show is called Uzumaki.
Uzumaki,
the one that's on Max. And there's one I watched before. Before that was Ninja Kumai. Kemoi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I watched that. I finished that. That was actually pretty. But again, those are on Max, HBO Max. But Kevin, this was definitely a great time. Definitely enjoyed having you on the show. Definitely appreciate you coming through. So before we let you go, if there's anything you want to share with our listeners,
well, I would actually like to just say that Nova IT Guy is here to serve all your IT needs for consulting, especially in regards to cybersecurity. But then again, Nova IT Guy is, pretty much me. And, Satoru Iwata once said, yes, my card might say CEO, but I'm a gamer at heart. I'm an engineer at heart.
Nice.
And I'm looking for the next big thing in cybersecurity and or AI. And if anybody's interested, please talk to me on LinkedIn and please come check me out.
Yeah, buddy.
Sounds good. Thank you. And thank you for those listening and watching and joining us for another episode of the Cyber Coffee Hour, part of the Alive Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, explore more engaging content in the Alive Podcast Network app. By supporting this podcast and nearly 100 other Black hosted shows, you can enjoy ad-free listening while contributing to a diverse range of voices in the podcasting space. So we appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more insightful conversations with you in our next episode. So until then, keep brewing those ideas and stay curious about cybersecurity. All right, that's it. It's a wrap. We out of here. Peace.